to talk about listing conversion, which is it's the process of going from your appointment all the way through to listing and starting your marketing. So it's the process of coming to an agreement with the seller to make all of that happen. And so there's a lot of setup that's required to get to that point. You have to be ready when you go out there. And even if you're a two-stopper, which I am typically a two-stopper, I go out once, talk, look at the house, get information, go back, and then come back out again. So even if you're a two-stopper, you have to be ready, because every once in a while, you go out the first time, they're ready to sign. And you're like, oh, yeah, I wasn't ready for this, you know? So they may be convinced and ready to go right off the bat. So you have to always be ready for whatever that client wants to do. But there's some things in here, just some core beliefs that Colin and I wanted to go over first. Does everybody know Colin? He's like the listing agent guru here. So he's going to give you lots of really cool information. So, you know, the core beliefs: no growth without discomfort. I mean, obviously, the more you put yourself at risk out there, the better you're going to get. There's a, you know, listing abundance. You know, it's hard to imagine right now that there's listing abundance, because it feels like there isn't, but there really is. There's plenty of people that need to sell their house, and all they need is a good agent. The part that success stems from duplicate and duplicable processes and systems. So, you know, you have to plan and execute the same thing every time for every listing. And there's little nuances dependent on pricing, location, areas, that kind of stuff. But basically, the process is the same. From the start to the end, it needs to be a process that you're familiar with, that you can speak to easily. It needs to be the kind of process that you have so much knowledge of the process that you can step into that process at any spot and pick up where you're going. You know, if you start the process and somebody asks a question, you can only do two things. You can either delay the question, which is to say, look, you know, we'll get to that in just a little while. I'll answer that question in a little bit. Or you go down in your process to that spot and you answer that question, and then go back in line again and start moving your process along. Those are the only two ways to handle that question. So just you either defer it or you answer it. Ignore it, probably not good unless it's one of those rhetorical type questions that sometimes you get asked in the process. Win-win or no deal. And this, honestly, the mindset in the business is moving a little bit, and there's becoming more animosity between agents, you know, that have listings and buyers and that kind of stuff. That's not good. It's not good for the buyers. It's not good for the sellers. We need to be looking for win-win deals. Now, that doesn't mean you give anything up when you're representing the seller. It doesn't mean that you're like, well, you know, you should take a little bit less. You know, that's not the idea. But it needs to be a positive experience from beginning to end for all parties involved. And you need to find ways to make it work that way. Because here's the bottom line. We're getting to a point now where agents believe that it's my client and I'm here to just represent them and nothing else matters. And the truth is that when you have a seller that wants to sell and you have a buyer that wants to buy, they're walking down the same direction. They're not butting heads and banging against each other and stuff. And the mindset that makes you think that's the case is wrong. See, you're looking for them to be walking down the same path, and they just join in, you know, like two paths coming together. And it's not like they meet and then they turn and go down that path. That's two paths that curve gently into each other. That needs to be your mindset, is that it's designed that we're going to find common ground somewhere down in here that makes it work. And so get rid of your animosity, Get rid of the things that, you know, if you've got a listing and it's a buyer, or if you're working with a buyer and it's somebody else's listing. And I'll tell you this, I tell every agent that I've ever counseled in the process, is that if your mindset is that you're going to do every single thing in the process, when a buyer and a seller come together, whether you're the listing agent or you're the buyer's agent or you're both, you tell yourself, I'm going to have to do everything. Then when the other agent actually does their job, you're thankful. It changes your mindset. You're like, God, that's really, thanks for doing that. What's his job? He's a listing agent. But when he does something and I'm like, wow, that's nice. You know, you actually like sent me what you were supposed to send me, you know. You know, you return the addendum that I sent to you, you know, a week ago to get signed. But if you change your mindset, it just makes your business go so much easier, so much nicer. And you don't whine about like, oh, gee, I got to run this thing all the way out there. Or I got to do that, or I got to pick this up, or whatever it is. Get over it. Just go do your job and do their job if you need to. The process is to get to the closing table and get it done. So just change your mindset and you'll be fine. And I go see immediately on my soapbox. Leverage is the key to abundance. You know, that's just part of the discussions that we're going to get into. Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. In other words, if you don't know what you're selling, it's hard to get somebody to buy it. You know, if you don't understand what your value is to the transaction and you're trying to sell it to somebody, then the only way you're going to sell it is by discounting it. We all know companies and agents that are like that. They sell a lesser service and they discount it to get people to buy it. You know, if you sell premium service with premium results and premium service and doing all the right things for the people, understanding, following up, being there when they need you, all those kinds of things, it's much easier to sell and you don't discount the sale. I will not convert 100% of the leads I do not generate. People will trust and follow what I can logically and tangibly explain. That's just having knowledge and understanding where you're at. It is unacceptable to leave sellers money on the table. You know, I mean, it's easy that you know what, I can call them and talk, they'll come down another 5. They'll come down. Is that the right thing to do for them? I mean, maybe you can get them another 2,500. Maybe you can get a little bit more out of the deal. Maybe they have something to offer the buyer that the buyer needs, and so the buyer will pay more money for that. You know, because there's at least 7 to 10 negotiable items in the process of putting an offer together. It's not just price. I mean, it's the style of financing, it's the earnest money down, it's the closing date, it's the possession date, it's the inspections and the timing of those inspections, and all of those things are all part of the negotiation. It's all part of the process to get there. So sometimes you have to think outside the box a little bit so that, you know what, they're not where we need them to be for price, but I do know from talking to the other agent that time is really important to these people. And for my sellers, they could care less. They're moving into an apartment, they're moving out of town, whatever it is. And so you see this path, this avenue to get to the spot, and it becomes a win-win because, like, hey, you know what, we can give time. You need time, we got time to give. But you need to give a little money. So it's a little give and take, and everybody comes out on the right side, and people feel good about it. Homes sell for 2 reasons, and we talked about this a little bit last week too, is that it's priced in exposure. And again, exposure is always a costly item. I mean, you can do a bunch of things, but in the long run, it ends up being a costly item to expose property marketing wise throughout there. You know, you have to, you know, even pay on Facebook, even though it's cheap marketing, you have to pay to get some money. So the idea is to make sure that the price is there. And pricing game's all about justification. Yeah, I mean, you can't just tell somebody, so well, just my gut tells me. that this is what it ought to be priced at. You know, they better be a really good friend if you're going to go off your gut. They need to be pretty strong. And pricing is neighborhood specific. Obviously, it's, you know, its location is the number one thing when you're talking about that. I don't know what's put in motion stays in motion. I really have no good understanding of that. I don't know. You know, we're having a science class. And pricing homes is not an exact science. And, you know, it's easier to price in ranges just because of that, and, you know, low range, high range. And pricing is also a movable item depending on other factors involved in it. You know, pricing and condition and pricing and timing and all those factors change pricing. So, you know, it's not an exact science. We're just trying to find our way through. So then the 7 vital listing responsibilities, Colin, you probably can speak to most of these easily. It's just on, you know, what these things are, just to run through them quickly. And we have on the following few pages, we have these activities of, you know, how you get, how you do, that kind of thing. We're not going to go through each of those. Those are for you to take. But just fly through those and discuss.
So I look at listing and listing conversions as like 2 separate parts. The first part is that you need to get that lead. You need to get that seller's name and number and address, and you need to schedule that appointment. And so if you look at it that way, how many of those leads can you convert to the actual appointment? And then you can look at the appointment as like, I'm converting this appointment into the listing. So I think this lead generation part is the first kind of step in that. I need names of people that I can call, and from those 50 people that I can call, can I meet with 5 of them? For sale by owners, expireds, social media, just sold, all those are really good idea. Farming's a good idea, but takes a little bit longer. For sale by owners are easy, but I think you need a process to do that. So in the past, I've randomly been driving down the street, we'll see a for sale by owner, call them, schedule an appointment. And I think I have enough grit where like, I'm able to do that. I could be so much more successful with for sale by owners if I had a process that I drove down the street, saw the sign, I called them, whether I talked to them or not. 2 days later, I texted them or I followed up again. 5 days after the first contact, I did a pop by and I dropped off a basket or something, so that you have that system where, you know, they say all the time, like if you can touch a lead more than like 6 or 7 times, you're 70% more likely to get the business. No, I don't know if those numbers are right.
No,
most statistics are. But it's so many times that you see that for sale by owner, you call and he doesn't answer and you just throw that lead away. Expireds are something that I really like right now. Existing homes are sitting on the market longer. They are having more price reductions. Every day on the MLS, you can see what homes are expired. If you pick an area that you're an expert in, I think that's something too, is that I'm not going to probably call a for sale by owner in Des Moines, or I'm not going to call one in Johnston. I mean, if they're in Ankeny where I'm at and I drive by it, those are the ones I'm going to call. So like the expireds, I would go and look at the ones in Ankeny, and you can call those people too, or stop by and knock on their door. I've been to some classes with expireds where their guys will check this every morning at 7:30, and at 8 o'clock they'll call a seller and say, hey, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, are you still interested in selling your home? And the sellers a lot of times will be like, yeah, it's still on the market. Why aren't you calling my realtor? And you can be like, well, honestly, it's not on the market. You know, most times there's a lot of agents that don't even realize that their listings are expired. And to be able to show that seller, like you've given that other realtor, you know, 90 or 120 days or 180 days for the opportunity, like I'm up, I'm working hard, like I give me the opportunity. So, and again, all of these little ideas, all you're trying to do is get in front of people. The last one I'll kind of talk on is just solds. We do just listed and just solds for certain neighborhoods. If it's an area that is new construction and most of the people just moved in the last 12, 18 months, like we're probably not doing that. I love townhomes and condos. Those are just, you know, you sell a condo in an area and there's 60 others. Those are 60 people that saw your sign every day driving in and out of there, parking their car and coming in with, you know, from after work or whatnot. So I'm kind of selective on where I do just listed and just solds, but again, what's your core market? Is it Altoona? Is it Bondurant? Like, where do you live? Where's your office? You know, where can you be most effective? As for the second part of that, when you get that appointment, I go in with the idea, you know, Lance was talking about your process and how it needs to be the same thing. My process for every seller that I meet with is basically the same. The only part that changes is the pricing approach to it. And I think that's the part that as the market goes up and down, it becomes a buyer's and seller's market, like we'll continue to adjust. But my process of meeting with a seller, and hopefully both sellers, you really do want to meet with both the husband and wife if that's the situation, not just one of the decision makers and not the other. When I get there, I introduce myself and say, you know, I'm Colin, I'm excited to meet you. What I always do first is like, can you give me a tour of your home? Let's just walk through it. I can give you suggestions on what you would maybe want to do if you list it. I always ask, how long have you lived here? It starts a conversation. I probably already know how long they've lived there because I've looked at the assessor site. I have insight on what the home is before I get there. But it gets them talking. So it's, you know, hey, Mr. Seller, it's nice to meet you. What we usually start off is doing a tour of your home. How long have you lived here? What major things have you done? Have you done any like capital? Have you replaced the roof, the furnace, the air conditioner? They like to talk about themselves and they like to talk about their house. And they'll tell you the selling points of it. You know, why did you buy it? Why did, you know, why have you loved it so much raising your family here or whatever the case might be. In addition, as I'm walking through, I'm giving them tips on, you know, decluttering closets. I've been in scenarios, and one we were talking last week, one of the examples I gave is, you know, you're walking through the living room and there's a water stain in the ceiling. Ask them what that is. Ask them what happened. You know, and they might come out and say, well, we had a roof leak 5 years ago and we got a whole new roof. That's awesome. New roof's a great selling point, but we need to paint that ceiling so that that's not an issue that someone comes in and goes, well, why is there water? We just get to sell them as, hey, it's a roof that's 3 or 4 years old. So kind of walking through, I tell people all the time with like closets, like if you don't need it for the next 2 or 3 months, pack it up, organize it, get it out. If it's not going to where you're moving, if you're downsizing and like all this stuff's not going, sell it, throw it away, donate it. And I always say, like, you know, it's entirely up to the sellers how much you do, but the more you do, the more we'll probably get out of your house. I always tell people that, you know, closets, they look half as full, they look twice as big. And I think Lance is talking about like your process. These are the same lines I give people. Every listing appointment I go to, I tell them the same thing. Closets that are half as full look twice as big. And like, they're like, yep, makes sense. So they start decluttering. Go through the home, all the way through the basement, checking out the furnace, air conditioner, jotting notes, writing down what's half and 3/4 and full bathrooms. But I really go into listing appointments with the assumption that like this is just step 1, and step 2, I'll be back to actually list your home. So once we kind of go through the home, it's like, well, let's sit down and talk. With me, we have like a little 4-page marketing sheet that I go over sometimes depending on where the lead's at. Like you're talking about, is this your cousin that's listing your home, or is this some random person that saw your sign and that you're meeting with? And how much of the details and information I go into. And you'll get a feel if like the sellers are like, no, I want to hear everything, or just stick to the bullet points and the pricing. And so adapting to what that seller's personality is kind of important. But sitting down with them, we have a little 4-page pamphlet that talks a little bit about who we are. It talks about some of our statistics from last year. There's a sheet on there that says kind of our process. And then on the back of it is a list of preferred vendors that we use. So for instance, when I'm talking and saying, hey, you really need to have this ceiling painted, I flip over the thing and I circle Premier Painting and say, call this guy. He'll do a great job for you and it'll be over this week to get it done type deal. I mean, offering that full service. We have a marketing sheet that is a pull out of the 4-page that Becca actually has. This is very simple, but people like to hold on to stuff and see where you're going to be doing it. I think the one thing that I do throughout listing appointments is kind of answer their questions and concerns throughout to where we get at the end and it's like, okay, I'll be back next Monday with a photographer and we'll be listing your home. So touching on all these little details and points to where, okay, this is where we're going to market your home. It's Trulia and Zillow and Realtor.com and Remax. We'll do open houses if the sellers are open to it. We have a website. We're just listed, just sold postcards. I tell sellers that, I don't know where these buyers are going to come from, but it's like fishing. So we're going to try it all, and whatever catches the one we're looking for is luckily the one that's going to get it done. The other one thing that, you talked about and like, we're all working together. I tell sellers, I work really well with other agents. I want to answer their questions. I want to get you feedback. I want this to go, just really well for everybody, because if you can get agents that work well with you, you can get more deals put together. I mean, you don't want to fight with that other realtor. When other realtor calls with questions, I get them answers right away, because it's like if you have a ball at the top of the hill and you're starting to roll it. Once you start asking questions and we're answering, like those are buying signals. So let me just keep overcoming your objections and you're going to end up writing an offer on this thing. So I always tell them I work really well with other realtors. When we get leads online, we follow up with them right away, and that we only are talking to them about their home. So we talk about like Zillow leads or Trulia leads. If someone inquires about your home, we're only going to talk to them about your home. We're going to show them your home because there's something about your home online that intrigued them enough that they're calling you to see it. So I don't want to dilute that with, hey, I can show you this one and 3 others that are in the neighborhood. Other things with listing agreements, I always bring a seller's disclosure. I always bring a lead-based paint disclosure if you need one. I always will leave that with the seller and say, what we like to do is set up a plan of, we go through the numbers and say, okay, like, are you going to need a week to clean up or 2 weeks or a month? We just went to a listing appointment yesterday where honestly, they're probably better off waiting 3 months, 4 months. They're not in a hurry. And it's like, take 3 months, declutter the house you've lived here for 22 years, and we'll list it in March. It's gonna be better than you trying to rush through it over the next 2 weeks and list it at Thanksgiving. So every seller situation is a little bit different, and you have to set up the best situation for them. Like those people that we met with yesterday, they will list with us in March because like a light bulb went off in their head when they're like, you know what, it does make sense. We're not in a hurry. Why are we going to try to do this in the weekend? Let's just spend Christmas here one more time. Let's wait till the market's better. And then, it's again, like filling your pipeline. In March, I got another listing out coming.
When you do that, are you having them sign any kind of pre-listing document?
No, I just follow up with them. So that's where systems, some agents would, but I hope and trust that, if they want to work with me and I want to work with them, that we can all just have candid conversations. And if I was just out for the listing, I would have had them sign right there and clean up, and I've been back in 2 weeks. Like,
there is a thing that you can do, Randy, which will make you different from other agents. And few do it, and I've suggested it many times. But when you sit down to talk with people and you're talking numbers and you're talking motivations and those kinds of things, so you tell them, say, listen, here's what I'd like to do. This probably won't happen to you if you meet somebody else, but for me, I care about you and what's going on in your life. So why don't we do this? I've got an agency agreement. Now, this doesn't bind you to me, but it does bind me to keep confidential any of the things that we talk about, any of the issues that come up. I can't then share that with other people when we have an agreement, an agency put together. So what I want to do is go over this agency agreement, talk with you about that so that we can have an open, frank discussion, and you don't have to worry about it going out there and becoming public, or me finding a buyer for your house and then they get all that information. Let's just do an agency agreement so that we understand each other. And they sign something. When they sign just an agency agreement, it's not exclusive, just an agency agreement, they feel bound. And I virtually guarantee you there won't be another agent that goes out and does that. And they're like, oh, they really, you know, he really cares or she really cares to make sure that they're covered. And that does give them notice that every time you talk to another agent, you're giving out your information and it's public unless you have an agency agreement. There is no agreement when you sit down and talk with somebody that your discussion isn't just open. The information you gather is available. So things like, you know, divorces and your motivations for pricing, and you have to move because you're being transferred. You can't take less than that. You know, all of those things that are not disclosable to other agents and other buyers in the marketplace, you have no agreement to keep them confidential. So put one in place. They'll appreciate it and they won't find somebody else. If they do interview somebody else, they'll probably ask them, you know, and the other agent won't have an agency agreement there and may not even know what the heck they're talking about. And you've just put yourself in first place. So it's a good system to have an agency agreement. Say, let's put this together before we discuss all your personal information so that I'm bound to keep it confidential. So that's just a thought.
So the scenarios that are not where, you know, we're pushing the listing back 3, 4, 5 months. A lot of it's, you know, let's set a goal. Let's set a date in mind that, you know, you think you can get everything done. I usually tell people that I like listing stuff on like Mondays or Tuesdays. They say like on Tuesdays, most people are at work browsing the internet on stuff that has nothing to do with work. So kind of throw something like that out. So we like to list on a Monday or Tuesday. So, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do you think we could list 2 weeks from today? That gives you 2 full weekends. What we do is we would be back on Monday with the photographer, the sign, the lockbox. At that point, you know, hey, here's a seller's disclosure that I'll need you to fill out the best that you can. If you have any questions, we can talk about when I get back. I'll bring the listing paperwork that day. You're gonna need to make sure that you have a key, your lockbox or your abstract, all these little things that you're starting to talk about. They're not even thinking if they're gonna list with you or not. They're like, all right, well, we gotta get the abstract out of the lockbox or out of our safety security box. Is gonna bring the sign back. We got 2 weekends, so this weekend we'll pack and next weekend we'll clean. Like, you know, they have already kind of started rolling. We usually like to start listing. We like listings homes on Monday or Tuesday so that if you're in Ankeny, there's a realtor tour every Wednesday. So we're gonna get your home on the market on Tuesday. We're gonna have a realtor tour on Wednesday. We're gonna have an open house on Sunday. And we're really gonna start boosting and sharing everything online on that first day. And that your place is not gonna be available next week. So if we can kind of get an early jump and create some urgency, it worked a lot more the last 2 years than it has in the last 6 months, but still it's somewhat of a marketing plan. It's the same process that we share with everybody. We'll never list a home without photos ready. And I think that it's one of those things that I tell sellers that, and you know, it just sets the expectation that we're just not doing it. You're gonna lose buyers and it's not worth it. So that, you know, I've had people like, well, can't you put it up on Friday even though we're getting photos on Monday? No, like you're gonna be better off just taking the weekend off and we'll get this done right on Monday type of deal. So I'm pretty adamant about photos. Set up that time to come back, bring the listing paperwork. Hopefully the seller's disclosure is already filled out. That's something that, you know, if you try to fill out one with the seller or while you're there, sometimes they take an hour just to fill that out, or looking for receipts and whatnot.
What are you coming on the estimate of proceeds?
Yeah, so the pricing part is the one part that I will always adjust. The only thing that I bring is I find comps, and I usually bring comps the first time. I'll look online, I'll see what their home is, maybe drive by it before our appointment. I'll ask them on the phone too, like, basic questions like, hey, is your basement finished? The other thing I always ask them is, give me a rough idea of what your mortgage balance is. And I don't need to know to the 1,000, but is it 80 or is it 180? Like, give me in the ballpark, because I want that for my estimate of proceeds. Because one thing that like I don't hound on so much is how much you're selling your home for, but how much are you walking away with? I mean, I've had situations where sellers are like, I'm not paying closing costs. And it's like, well, they'll pay full price if you give them $2,000 in closing costs, and they're going to get more out of it than you wanted from the beginning. So what does it matter? Like, that's the bottom line that matters. So I'll take 4 or 5 comps. I get rid of foreclosures. I mean, if you search 10 comps, I'm probably going to get rid of the bottom 1 or 2 and maybe the top 1, depending on, what the home is and where it's at, the age of it. So I don't want to bring a lot of comps, but 5 or 6. And then I always do a range. So if your home is worth 200 to 210,000, that's what I'll bring is that. The comps will kind of be in the middle. I always print the statistic sheet, because I think that's something like price per square foot. If you add it up, we're right at 210,000. But I'll bring this range, and then I will also say, like you said, this is not an exact science. I always have conversations with my sellers, because one, your tolerance of how long you want to be on the market. Like, do you need to sell this last week, or do you need to sell this in 2 months from now? That definitely influences the pricing that you'll give. Are you willing to declutter, have the carpets cleaned, paint that bedroom upstairs, and clean up the landscape? If you are, that affects the price. Where if you're like, no, we're not going to do anything, just come put it on the market. What price range are you at? So different factors like that. But when you're at a listing appointment, I did this just last week, where I had a friend bought a house 2-3 years ago, and when we bought it, it was like 140,000, green cabinets, ugly counters, appliances were like, it was just bad. Good space, but bad. So he luckily found a nice little lady to help move in and marry him. And so she came through and painted the cabinets and new carpet, and I didn't know what it would be like when I got there. I just remembered what it was. And I brought my range, but when I'm sitting there, I think I told him it was worth between like 155 and 165. And I'm walking through this house and I'm like, well, it's definitely more worth than 165. So I'm using my estimate of proceeds, and I'm like, here you go. I originally thought, just looking at the numbers, you're between 155 and 165, but I think you can list at 175. And then what I always tell them is that this estimate of proceeds, we're going to use while we have offers. And on the right-hand side, it's going to be our list price. So we're at 174.9. This is what you're going to walk away with. And when we get an offer for 165 and they're asking for $2,000 in closing costs and a home warranty, we'll be able to compare the differences. And so again, we're looking at that net number. And then what I do is present it with an offer, and I always send them the offer, then I send them the estimate of proceeds, and then I call them. And I say, let's open up the estimate of proceeds. That's really all that matters. We can hammer out close date and whatnot. But when we counter, and so say we go back and tell them, all right, we'll do the closing costs and that's it. And then they come back and they come up a little bit. I update the sheet again. So before we were $10,000 apart, now we're $4,000 apart. Now where do we need to go? Well, I think if you come down another $2,000 and they can come up, we'll get a deal done. All right, let's do that. And sooner or later I've closed $20,000 gaps, 25. I mean, like, you just slowly start itching, getting back and forth. And I think too, like you said, there's so many things that are negotiable other than the price. And I really try to work with my team is that closing in possession is huge. We've had a couple sellers that are building homes, and a buyer comes in and they want a good deal. And it's like, okay, if we can close on November 3rd, a Friday morning early, and we can give you possession Saturday morning at 10 a.m., we'll take $2,000 off, we'll accept your offer at 188,000. And to the buyers who are coming out on an apartment, it doesn't matter if we get on Friday morning or Saturday morning. If it saves us $2,000, this is great. And the sellers are going, well, super, we can close on our current home, go close on our new home, have all day to move, clean it up and hand it over Saturday morning. And then they don't have to worry about pods or moving trucks or having everything in the truck, then going to closing. I have a family that's doing that this Friday. They have 4 kids. There's no way they would have been able to, you know, so just again, like seeing the whole picture and laying out a plan that goes, yeah, like this makes sense. We've done delayed closing like 90, 120 days. You know, people in our apartment really like the house. All right, we will wait 90 days to close on this, but you have to pay us close to asking price.
Yeah.
You know, going back to the pricing and how the market shifts. So the last like 2.5 years, like I would go into a listing appointment and say, you know, your house is worth between 200 and 210. Let's list at 215. We'll probably sell it in a week. You might have to give like $2,000 in closing costs, but you'll still get more out of it than we were originally hoping. The market has shifted so much that now I go into listing appointments and I'm like, all right, if we're between 200 and 210, you're probably closer to 200. It's coming back to where buyers are getting 2 to 3% worth of concessions on nice homes and 4, 5, 6% on ones that are not clean, that are beat up, that don't make repairs, you know, that kind of not willing to work with the seller. When you think about it, the last 2.5 years, it's been basically like 1, if that. So if you're buying a $200,000 home, you're getting $2,000 in closing costs. Well, now it's, if you're at a $200,000 home, 3%, you know, you're getting, yeah, you're getting 4 off the price and that $2,000 in closing costs. Right? We just had a home in Aiken where I think we wrote it 30,000 under. But again, I think you just kind of got to know the situations where like the agent, and this is where like listing agents, like you should never disclose more than you have to. So this listing agent was like, yeah, he's already got a job in Indiana and he really needs to sell. And we're like, super, like, good luck for him. You know, like I learned at a young age, like they always said like the best thing you can say is like, this home just no longer meets their needs. That doesn't say that it's too small, too big, can't afford it, moving out of town, new job.
How do
like,
we make a change?
You know, and once we knew that this gentleman was moving out of town, like we were working for our buyers, like we were ultra aggressive on our offering. And it was, and this is where it's shifting, is that last 2.5 years, that would have been the only home available. And now there's that and 3 others. So Mr. Seller, like we'd like to, you know, work with you and buy this home, but there's also the one around the street. There's also one on the other side of the block, you know, and, you know, as a seller, this is the conversation that happened. Like, it's tough right now. And we're getting into November, December, and January. He had no other option but to take it, because what was he going to do? Wait for another buyer to come through during Thanksgiving or Christmas? And we made it clean. So that, again, here's the negotiation part of it, is that we were just going after price. No closing costs, no home warranty. We'll be awfully generous on the home inspection, and we'll close. You pick the close date, and so they ended up getting a good chunk off that thing, like 10% off. So
Yeah, that's, you know, having an awareness of the market is of utmost value to you as a listing agent or a buyer's agent. You just need to know. You need to know where you stand. So there's a process of when you meet with people. There's as Colin's been talking about, there's the pre-listing process, which is to gather information that is pertinent. Yes, Randy?
Is there a sheet on pre-listing questions someplace?
We have one.
Yeah.
Is it in this packet or?
No, we have it right up here.
Yeah, it's up here. But the idea is that you need the basic information to help you understand how you're going to price the home, where their motivations are, and what's going to happen. Here's the thing, and this works as a buyer or a seller. If you're talking to them on the phone, if you met them on the street, the issue that we need to identify is that they need to have a problem that you find out about, and then you become the solution to that problem. That's called sales. So you do what you know, my terms from the old days is called wopens, which is who, what, where, when, how, and why. Those are questions that you ask that deem an answer. Don't ask yes, no questions. They stop. As soon as the question's answered, it stops. ask questions about their motivations. Why are they moving? When do they have to be there? How did you, get my name? Just all these things, and you work those, and you keep listening. If you want to impress somebody when you're interviewing them like that, write their answers down. It's as simple as that. If you have a piece of paper and when they say something, you take a note, they will notice that. They're like, oh, what I'm saying is important to this person. They're going to factor it in. So it's important that you do that process. So pre-listing, you gain that information. And when you're talking to them on the phone, if it comes down to that, then it may be, the first time you meet them and you're talking to them and you gather this information. But you need to know these things, know their motivations, know what they've done to the house, know all about that stuff, so that you can then move forward. Because you got to find out, what is it? What is it? What is it that you can become the answer to? What is that process? And if it's just price, maybe it's not a good listing. Maybe it's not. I mean, if they want to list it for, $20,000, $30,000 over market value, is it worth your time and expertise to do it? In most cases, no. I mean, it's like, why? Why do that? Why bother? Why put your name on something and then people are going to be, yeah, that sign's been there for 4 months.
They're gonna get mad when it doesn't sell.
Yeah, and it's always your fault.
No,
it's always your fault.
And then not hoping it doesn't sell, but kind of keep tracking it. And when it doesn't sell,
yeah,
I've done that
go
2
back
or
in.
3 times this year where I've listed stuff 30 grand under where it was originally listed with somebody else.
Yep. So you want that. You want that pre-investigation. Those questions and find out those answers and that kind of stuff. Because listen, you have a mindset. The mindset has to be: are you going to be effective in the relationship that you're creating? If you can't be effective, in other words, what they call a win-win. But if you can't be effective at your job, at your position, what you do for a living, you can't do it.
So what if you get a referral and it's out of an area of the MLS that you're on? For example, Pella.
Mm-hmm.
We're not on the MLS, but Pella's on Des Moines. But to get a real good price of the listing,
Yeah.
What would you do in that sense?
Do
you think your full advantage is take the listing and then help them with the buying, or try to find it?
Moving up here to buy.
No, they're staying. I've been a buyer's agent in Pella before.
Yeah.
It's super easy, love it.
Yeah.
But listing is a different story because you're not on their MLS.
You're
to
not.
Find the specific comps. I found comps here on ours, but.
Yeah, you have to research a little bit, and you can go out to different sources. One of the things you can go is, as you go out to research the areas, at least in the active sites, to see what's out there, what's available, all the competition, which is really, really important right now, is competition. More so than solds right now, because solds are 6 months old and the market's changed.
Right.
And so that's not good information.
I'm taking actives and pendings.
Yeah.
I'm not taking.
So actives are huge, because competition and entry pricing is the most important factor this time of year. Where are you coming in at?
Yeah.
Certainly you want to be able to justify it, and you justify it with solds and all that.
Right, because one came in 6 months ago at 150 and one just sold this month at 169.
Yeah.
And they were like 100 square foot difference
Yeah.
of one of the comps. So then I'm sitting here going, okay, well, that's a big difference, 150 to 169 for the seller.
And you can do a really good search of, on realtor.com, you can search areas, and it's all MLSs, so you can get all that information and get it from an agent perspective. And
so you're saying list it and help them find the
Well, as long as you're comfortable with, where they're at and what they're doing and that kind of thing, you can.
My main thing was price.
If you're not, if it's me and I get a call from Pella, I'm referring it. Instantly, I'm
but
referring
to me, it's close.
Yeah,
for me.
For you, you're fine. But, for me, I'd be like, what, let me get you a good solid agent, get a referral there.
So will their listing be on the Pella MLS then?
Well, that was my question to Shane.
I'd probably try to and again, I want to refer it, but I'd call another RE/MAX agent down there and say I just need to split it with you 50-50 on this side alone.
I thought you couldn't do that.
They can no, it's going to be co-listing, It'd be them listing it and paying you a 50%.
Oh, I got what you're
Yeah.
saying.
And just say like, I will still be involved, I will
Oh.
still be kind of a
Yeah,
point
that's
person
the
in this.
rule that we-
Yeah,
But
because
like-
We just talked about that
Yeah.
recently.
There's a,
I thought about that too, because then they,
Yeah,
Because
there's
you
a
need it on that
thing-
I
local.
know.
yeah, there's a thing where if it's outside, there's a way to do it. Where
Really?
you can both list it, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's a way to do it, and I have to get the details, because we've been fighting this back and forth.
Plus, you probably want her, that local, I mean, that's something else. Again, like I have good relationships with other realtors, so that you probably want her local.
And I already have one, because when I was the buyer's agent over there, I worked really closely with that listing agent, like a lot, so I would probably just call her up and just say,
Generate those relationships.
Yeah.
Like in my hometown of Fort Dodge, I send leads back and forth up there all the time.
okay,
But if a gal helped you when you bought down there,
Yeah.
be able to throw her half of a $150,000 listing,
right, yeah,
it's probably better exposure for your sellers. And I think too,
No.
it's like if you always have their best interest in mind.
and that's where I was at, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, it's a
Yeah.
divorce situation, so
Yeah.
he's already kind of like
Yeah.
emotionally, and that's why I got referred to him, because I know what he's going through.
Yeah.
But he's very he doesn't do technology, he's very like in person.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't mind driving there all the time, but to have
It
someone
would pay
right
for
there.
itself to have someone right
I
there.
know.
They know the
And then,
market.
yeah, and then they're also in offices down there where it's like, hey, I got this great listing over here.
Yeah,
And that word of mouth with realtors, that's,
okay,
you know.
Yeah.
okay.
So the pre-conversation, getting the information, understanding what's going on. I mean, there's in here is this whole idea of, the appointment and how you ask the questions and what questions you ask. But we're just gonna highlight a couple of those. And it's like, one of the things they talk in here is get on the listing channel. That's a mindset. It's a mindset of going in and what are you doing? And you're good at what you do, and you need to be able to communicate that stuff. But they have to buy into you. And so there's little things, because if you're going and you have a specific appointment at a time to go see a house, and you pull into the driveway, and there's every likelihood in the world that if they've not met you, they're like looking out the window or a curtain or something to try to see who is this, that kind of stuff. If they saw you pull into the driveway on time or a few minutes early, never late, ever, for any reason, there's no such thing as being late to a listing appointment. Do not do it under any circumstance. So
You do it,
You
call
shouldn't be late
them,
to anything.
call them.
Yeah,
Even if
true.
you're gonna be a minute late, call them 5
Call them
minutes
and say,
early and
look,
say like,
yeah, it's gonna-
traffic's bad, I'm around the corner
Right.
on my way.
But you pull into the driveway and they see you take the mirror and move it, and you look and make sure that your hair is good. You make sure that you're presentable. You do those things because they don't think you're being vain and all that kind of, they think that you care what they think. They're like, oh, that person wants to, present themselves well. That's a good thing. And the approach to the house, you don't just get out of your car and just walk up to the door. You get out of your car and you're like, you look around and check things out. How's this look? What's the landscaping like? Does it need painted? What's the electric look like? How's the service coming in? Does it have a 2-car garage? If it's got a 2-car detached garage, is it accessible? How many homes have you seen that's got a 2-car garage and you can't get in the side that's behind the house? It's like, oh, it's a 2-car, but it's one side usable, the other side storage. Or you got, where you can pull in and then you back up, pull in, back up, pull in like that, because that's only for storing the vehicle you use only on summer days. So have an awareness of what's going on when you're there. And you go up to the door then and you knock on the door, smile. They're gonna answer the door. Don't be standing there looking at your phone while you're waiting for them to answer the door. You smile. And the first thing out of your mouth needs to be a compliment. Figure it out. Maybe it's the color of their house. Maybe it's the landscaping. Maybe it's their dog. Maybe it's their kid. Whatever it is, find something to compliment them about, because that immediately changes your approach to them. So, it's like, God, I was just looking, did you guys just paint? Oh, no, that's been there for a while. It looks great. Now, don't lie. Okay, don't lie. It's like, man, I love your dog, and the dog's like gnarled, like that. You're like, oh, how cute. But find a compliment. Give them something to open that up. And then when they invite you in, then take control. Now, this is where we found we have completely different approaches, and they're absolutely fine. Colin's first approach is, hey, why don't we go around and just take a look at the house, and I'll take some notes and, that kind of stuff. And that's how he opens, breaks the ice, does that kind of thing. I'm different. I've always been a different way. I go in, and the first thing I do is like, do you have like a dining area, something like that? We can just sit down and visit. And if they tell me, so do you want to see the house? I'm like, absolutely. I want to see the house. But right now, the most important thing here to me is you. So I'd like to take a minute to sit down and just find out what's going on. The house at that point to me is ancillary. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll look at the house. We'll talk about that. We'll do all those things. But I need to know what's going on with those people. That's what I care about. So it's a completely different approach, and we end up in the same place. We end up there. Because in, 75% of the time, I don't even need to see the house. I know what it's going to be priced at. I can tell when you drive up, you look, you go in, it's like, oh, it's a Des Moines 2-story. Wonder if they've updated the kitchen.
Yeah.
Is the basement finished? What have you done new?
But that's where I like walk around, because then my price in my head, going in with a range of 2 to 210, I have an idea. Looking at the numbers, I think 210 is realistic. And then you start going through it, oh, you put in a tile shower, all right, you can go a little bit higher. Oh, you just did new carpet, maybe you can go even a little bit higher. So that walkthrough for me is important, because my number in my head's always moving.
Sure. And the same thing on my walkthrough, it still moves, because when I sit down with them, I don't talk pricing at that point. That's a come back to the table part. So that's a little bit different. Oh, get back in there. So that it's just two different ways. So there's not a right and a wrong. It's how you want to approach that. But the idea is to get in there. Then you start talking to them about what's going in, what's going on with them, so that you know how you can help them. And you get into the conversations, and they give you literally conversations in this paperwork, and they talk about all the different things. One of the things like Colin talked about, confirm that you've got the people that are signatory, confirm that they're there. Because if you're going to talk pricing and preparation and that kind of stuff, you don't want to talk to one person and have them have to communicate it to the other person. That's really hard to get done, because then now you haven't had a chance to, who's the decision maker? Who's the one that makes, which direction you're going to go, or what price it's going to be, or those kinds of things, or does the work to get it ready.
When setting those initial appointments, you got leads, wherever they come from, I want to meet with them as soon as possible, but I will push it back a couple days to meet with them both. So if a wife calls on a Monday and says, sure, you can come over and look at my place. Well, is your husband? No, he's out of town until Thursday. Well, let me come over Friday. I'd rather, and then that just gives me more time to look at comps and numbers and put my stuff together. But I'll definitely push stuff back to me with both people.
So as you process,
all you're gonna end up doing is another appointment anyway. It's not the whole deal.
Yeah. So as you process through here, and you can thumb through and see, it's like I said, arrive on time. Parking on the street is a good idea, because you see it as a buyer when you park on the street. If you park in the driveway, you don't. So park in the street, take a look at the house, and see what's going on. They do the ask a tour after the kitchen, and you flip the 3 and 4 round, which is totally fine. But you have to do things. You have to break the ice. That's the first thing you got to do when you don't know somebody. You got to break the ice. Now, that can be as simple as saying, you know what? Do you happen to have a glass of water? As soon as they serve you, you've broken the ice. As soon as they do that, oh, absolutely, get a drink. That little thing changes the tone. So break the ice. From that point on, as soon as you break the ice, you start visiting. The idea is to build rapport. You have to find a commonality. Where they come from, where they go to school, how old are they? Do they have kids? Where do they work? Whatever it is, find out where you can find something to relate to, because that's rapport. Rapport builds trust, and without trust, there's no sense of you moving forward. They have to gain trust in you. As soon as you gain trust, because the old deal is that they don't care what you know until they know that you care. That is so strong, so important. You always have to remember that. They have to know that you care, because your knowledge can be vast, immense. They could care less if they don't think you're going to apply it to their best welfare. It has to happen.
What you're saying about like breaking the ice on me, for me, I'm just more comfortable doing it walking through their house.
Yeah, sure.
Like I don't run out of talking points when I'm looking at their house. At the same time, I'm looking around and going, "Oh, you must be a Cubs fan. Like, sweet, it was a heck of a year last year, right?" Like, so for me, that tour is working on the price, little upgrades or selling points, things that they need to get done, having conversation. I even touched a little bit throughout the way on how we market, like, yeah, we'll get really good photos and, not hammer down on everything, but it's just a good 10-minute or 15-minute tour. I mean, because for me, like sitting across the table, it would be awkward for me. Like, I'd be sitting there and be like, all right, so
Yeah.
where are you from? What do you like to do?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, why are you here to sell my house?
Yeah, and there's certainly, you have to have your mindset of which way you're going, and like we talked, you can go either way, and it works, but it's just something that has to be done. Now, as we're talking about, once you gain that rapport and you visit a little about what's going on, what's their motivation, why are they moving, where are they going to, those kinds of things, and with Colin, that's combined in the walkthrough. With me, it's done before the walkthrough. But during the walkthrough, you have to take notes on things. Not only like, okay, it's a 3/4 bath off the master, not a full, there's a half bath in the basement, it's not 3/4. The laundry is on this level. All those things that are important and that you tend to forget when you're filling out the listing data report, if you don't take notes on it. And then you got to call them back and go, was that bathroom a 3/4? Did it have
trying to look at the pictures?
Yeah, you're like,
oh my God, I can't tell.
I gotta write that down, dang it, So, but when you're doing the walkthrough, go through there and do those things that a buyer does. If you're walking along like this and it goes, eat, you stop and you're like, eat, 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 and you make the floor squeak and they're like, I don't know, do we need to fix that? Oh boy, it'd be good if we did. And you take a note and you go on to the next thing. And make those things obvious, because for buyers, those are going to be obvious things that they see, that they feel. If the floor squeaks, they're like, oh my God, was the house falling apart? Is it fixable? Is it easy to fix? Is it as small as that the underlayment of the floor on the newer floor, plywood? Is it as small where you literally can find out where it's squeaking and try to put a screw through? And if you do the right thing, you can take a screw right down through the carpet and you'll never know it's there. People don't know that. They're like, well, we don't want a screw in the middle of the floor. Well, carpet is woven, it's got holes, and you can just go right through, pop the carpet up, you'll never know it's there, and your floor isn't squeaking. Okay, so look at those things, because if your floor doesn't squeak, that's a big plus.
You're adding value by doing that. Like, you're walking through as a buyer going like, okay, this is an objection that someone might have. Let's just fix it. It's, like the example I gave with the ceiling in the living room.
Yeah.
Just paint it. Like, it's not an issue. The floor, like, let's just fix it. Like, but what you don't want to have happen is the buyer come through and go, oh, squeaky floor, water leak in the living room.
Yeah, let's get
like, this place isn't worth 180, it's worth 140. Let's run.
Yeah.
$10 worth of paint and a nail. Or
so be effective. Everything you're doing, be effective at what it is. It all has a purpose, and it's extremely detailed here. We're not going to go through word for word on this stuff, but then when you get into page 11 and it talks about what's important to you, you need to know that. You need to know what is important. Is it price? Is it time? Is it, what's the scenario? I mean, it's just little things that you talk about. You know, what if you've got a person that's transferring, they're going out of town and it's gonna be the wife and 2 kids are gonna be staying at home. What's important? Well, maybe safety is an important factor. Maybe you need to address that because it's like, well, I don't know. You're just gonna, like, people are just gonna come into my house. You know, address that. It's like, you know, in this situation, here's what I like to do. I like to put the keys in the lockbox and everything, but then I give you the lockbox that has your keys in them. See you later.
Bye.
You know, and then you tell them, say, look, when a showing calls and makes an appointment, then you can set the lockbox out. So you're in control. You have a comfort level. That's important. That's important. It's important for the wife that's staying there. It's important for the husband that's on the road. He's like, okay, I mean, somebody can't just open the lockbox and walk in. That's a big thing. So, you know, finding out what's going on, you know, setting the tone, getting their motivations down, look through all of those things. We've talked about a ton of this. You talk about your you know, FSBOs and expireds, that kind of stuff. They sometimes have different questions. You get into your CMA and what's going on. This is like your second appointment for some of us that, you know, coming back after the fact to go over pricing and discuss those things to figure out, you know, the price and where it's going to be. So that process is there and it's detailed highly in here. So to answer those questions, there's lots of good answers that are in here.
Are you guys doing a full-blown CMA when you?
Thompson numbers.
On the second visit, for sure. On the first one, you get close on the first one. You at least have an awareness of pricing when you go in.
And there's a lot of times where like I'll have that range and kind of that idea, and that I won't even know what I'm listening for when I go back the second time. And it's like, well, how would you guys think about it? Talk on it. I think we're still in this range, and I'll see if there's any new comps when I come back next week. We can lock it for sure. But I think too, like the one thing that we talked about, like you can't let, as much as we want, the sellers can't determine what the price is on their own. Like you have to be a real estate professional and like logically, the one bullet point in this first thing, it's like, you know, where is it? Logically and tangibly explain why you think your house is worth 250 and I told you it's worth 210. Like,
yeah,
you know, and so like, and I think what you're also talking about, like for me explaining the process, like in my head, it's what I do for every listing. It's like, okay, I'm going to come back next week. You're going to have it cleaned. We're going to sign the listing documents. The photographer is going to come at that time. We'll get the photos back that night. On Tuesday, we'll have it go up and live. It takes 24 hours usually to get to all the major websites. I'm going to bring a lockbox, and at this lockbox, it's going to be safe, secure. I know to the minute when anytime anyone hits it. I always tell them too that all showing's going to come through me, and so that you're going to know exactly when the appointments are, and you will know who was in there last and at what time. I also say when we get kind of setting the expectation, like when we do sell your home, there's going to be 3 more times that they come after this. It's going to be the home inspection, the appraisal, and the termite. You can be home for the termite and the appraisal, but you probably shouldn't be home for the home inspection. Just setting that expectation, like you said, if it's knowing your scenario, if it is like a mom and a couple kids home, absolutely bring that in the house. I'll let you know when the showings are. We can set it out at that time. I never hang them on the door.
It's rare that you do anymore. You know, if you put them outside, you can also have like
tucked under a
lock
chair,
the storm door.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, so that they can't get to the inside. That's a plus of hanging it on the doors. You can say it's hanging on the door. It's safe and secure. All you got to do is lock the storm door, and nobody can get in your house. So allay those fears that people might have. They might not even know they have them until you start talking about strangers coming into their house and that kind of thing.
Let's get that conversation.
So, and like Colin was talking, you have to set expectations. They have to understand how the process is going to work. They need to know the nuances of how it's going to get marketed, how our showing's going to be set up, who's going to call, how are they going to be notified about those things. and get those things set up. And, you know, it's like, you know what, is it better to call you or text you when, you know, we need a market set up? And then I've got a couple right now where the sellers are totally comfortable and they actually approve the showings. So I just directed that to them so that they approve a showing and I'm out of the middle. It still tells me, you know, what's going on. I understand when it's going to be shown, that kind of thing. But they're comfortable with doing that, and it takes one step out of there for them, so they know exactly.
The other part of like explaining the process and being, you know, it's like an assumptive close to where like, all right, I'm going to be back next weekend or next Monday with a photographer. It's not like, are you interested in listing with me? It's like, no, I'm coming back on Monday with the photographer. We're going to list this thing. Like if you start getting to the point where they're like, yeah, so we got to get the abstract, we got to get the extra key. Like they're at that point not even deciding what they're listing with you, if they're listing with you or not. It's just what price and what do we need to get done before we actually do list.
Yeah, I call that the puppy close. And the reason is that if you've ever had a dog, and they always think they're like going to go outside and go with you, you know, get a treat, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter how many times you tell them no, they continue to just be there. And so, you know, you need to have that kind of attitude towards the seller and towards buyers if you're working with them, is that you're like the puppy. You're just assuming that that's going to happen. That's just, here we go. You know, you called me to list the house. I'm ready to list the house. Here's how we're going to do it. I'll see you then. We'll sign there. We'll do this and that. And you just keep that assumptive close going until they go, whoa, wait a minute. You're like, oh, what? What? I mean, did I not explain something? Okay, so, you know, if they want to wait, then you need to, what haven't I explained? And if they go to a thing and say, well, you know, we made an appointment with another agent, we kind of feel like we ought to talk to them. It's like, is there something that they could tell you that would create a reason for you to list with them instead of me? Did I leave something out? And put the question back on them. Have I not done my job here? Are you not convinced that I'm the best agent, you know, for you? And if they're like, well, we already set the appointment, stuff like that. So you know what? Why don't I do this? I don't mind. We'll go ahead and get things going here. I will personally call each of those agents that you've set the appointment with to let them know that the house is on the market. So they don't have to. Because that's what they fear. They fear calling the agent and going, oh, well, we want to cancel our appointment, you know. So just take that off their plate. It's like, I'll just call them for you and I'll tell them. I used to have a ding with Lowell Bauer. I don't know if you know him, but he's been around forever. And we were highly committed. We were the same company, high competitors. And there was nothing that him or I liked to do more than call in the other person and go, hey, you know that appointment you had? I got it listed, so just find a buyer. It was wonderful. It's just wonderful. But that's the
I ignore when they say they're meeting with other people. I mean, like, that's great, but we'll be back on Monday to take photos. Like, I mean,
Sure.
You just got to keep moving forward, like, you know. The one thing I never talk about other realtors and what they do. I just stick to what we do. Like, I work hard. I wake up. This is my full-time job. Like, we will do an excellent job for you.
The last thing I want to do is just go through some things, and we've got some ideas in here, but does anybody like specifically have a listing objection that they want to explore? Like when people have, well, what about this? Or, well, what about that? Is there ones that have come up that you're like, God, I wish I just had a good answer to that objection? Anyone here that are there that you want to explore? No objections? You guys are awesome. Phenomenal.
I think the biggest one I have right now is I've been talking with this couple for months and they're just not ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I've like backed off my contact with them, but still drop them an hello email. And now they reached out to me because she's pregnant. They need a bigger home, they need to sell, but he hasn't talked to her yet. So we're still just kind of in this cycle of, okay, at what point can I come over and take a look and?
Reverse it. So when are you due? What we're
They're doing
in
April.
Super, you're doing April. We probably need to get your home on in like January or February, or like depending on what it is. Like, is it a $400,000 home that could take 120 days, or is it a $150,000 home that's going to take 30 days? And when's ideal for you to move in? Like, if you're having a baby in April, you probably don't want to be moving in mid-April. Like,
Right.
you probably want some time to be there and settled. So let's plan on maybe you're moving in March. It takes 30 or 45 days to close. So now we're back at the middle of January. And if it takes 30 or 45 days to sell your home, we need to get your home on the market December 1st. So from the month of November, you're gonna need to like declutter, clean. If, you know, what I would say, like Thanksgiving, it's real dead time. Maybe that Monday right after Thanksgiving, we can catch those in between Thanksgiving and Christmas buyers. But like, back it up. I always work backwards to where if your end goal is to be in this house when that new baby's here in April, super, like, you know, and those days aren't for sure, but we should be in the ballpark. So let me come November, beginning of November, and I'll give you ideas. Yeah, November 1st.
Yeah.
And we can get the photos taken before Thanksgiving so that we know that when Thanksgiving hit that Monday, 8 a.m., listings up, photos up, we're on the market and ready to go. And if it takes 60 days to sell, we're still at a good spot where you're going to be in your home maybe 30 days before you.
You know, is there a specific objection with the husband? Is he worried about something?
No, they have a home in mind that they like.
Mm-hmm.
They're just leery of pulling the trigger because it's a bigger, more expensive home than what they're in now, but I've seen their home.
Yeah.
It's very nice, so, 6 months ago, completely would have sold.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Now it's like, I'm sure it will sell, but.
Okay, so if they've got a home like that, have they done the financing? Do they understand the pricing of the home they're buying and what the payment's gonna be and how that's gonna work?
Yeah.
They do.
Do they understand what their current home would sell for and what they're walking away with?
Well, I didn't get that far, so I
So
did
that's
kind
a
of a
huge
market
piece of
analysis,
it.
just kind of giving them
Yeah.
a ballpark of what I thought we
Yeah.
could list it for. But yeah, I've not been able to physically go to their
Yeah.
home yet, because they're just kind of like, not yet, not yet.
Yeah.
Well, now's the time to come. And I think the big important thing is, again, like, don't make it like, well, I'm coming to list your home, but I want to provide you information so that you can make the decision if this works out or not. What's your mortgage balance? I'll do an estimate of proceeds and bring some comps. And then that's just such a huge part. Are you walking away with $100,000 with equity, or $40,000 or $10,000 or none? Like,
Yeah.
where's that number at? And that absolutely affects what they're buying. And so, let non-abrasively,
Right.
let me show you what you tentatively walk away, talk to the mortgage guy, see if those payments make sense. But then I would get back to like December 1st is probably when you're gonna wanna list if you wanna be in there before that. And that's where you can pull the strings for her, is like, you probably don't wanna be moving,
Right.
9.5 months pregnant or whatever it is, like ready to pop, have your nursery set up.
You can also get in the house with like, I'll tell you what, I don't mind, let's do this. I'll stop by, we'll take a walk through that kind of stuff, and I'll give you some ideas on little things you can do moving forward to help get it ready for when the time comes. You'll have some notice on that instead of having this 3-4 days of just anxious, trying to get everything done. I'll just stop by and give you a few notes on some things that you can do to help so that when we are ready, you know what needs to be done, or you've been able to do some of that. So, and surprisingly, when you tell somebody, why don't I do this? I don't mind. That's a strong statement, and people miss it when you're just talking like this. They don't miss that because you already answered their second question. Because when you say, I don't mind, you've already, because their thing will be, we don't want to bother you. This is my job. Yeah.
Right.
This is what I like.
Yeah. So you answer that question, say, why don't I do this? I don't mind. And then just get a time. Say, is like, Tuesday evening, Wednesday evening, I got them both open. Just what would be a good time? And just push a little bit towards the close. They'll tell you if you're too far, they'll tell you right away. But you have to have that gut check meter that you have that go off a little bit. Push yourself towards it a little bit, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, and try to get in the door and use those different things, different ideas of, timing. There's, I rarely go into a house, I'm sure your home's wonderful, but I rarely go into a house that's ready to put on the market right now. Okay. So those are some ideas for you. Some other things that, this, one of the things, like Colin, I was talking to this other agent, and they said they could get a whole lot more money than what you're telling me.
Based on what numbers?
Well, they just said that, the market's hot and they'd be willing to list it, they're like telling me $15,000 more than where you're at.
So we ran into that, and it's, I would be interested to see what comps they're using. And like currently right now, are they using comps from 6-7 months ago? Because June and July is still good. And Memorial Day, again, kind of knowing your market. Like came 4th of July, the market shifted. So if they're bringing comps from earlier this year, yeah, it probably does show you're $15,000 higher, but the inventory is going up. And that's why I'm here with pendings and actives, because it doesn't matter what sold last May. It matters that you and 3 other split levels are all the same price range. So this is where we need to be, not up here. Okay, so that's the way to answer it like that. One thing, you can do one-liners sometimes if they work for you. You can do one-liners. When somebody asks you that, you say, you know what, I totally understand. There are agents who want to come out and list houses, and then there are agents who come out to sell your home. I'm here to sell it. I'm not here to list it. I don't need signs in somebody's yard. I'm here to sell your house. So that's why I'm telling you these prices. And just there are some realtors out there, I'd say, there are realtors that buy listings where to the point where what number sounds good to you, 325,000, and then I bet in a month they're calling to do a price reduction and another one.
I know an agent, and their whole marketing plan is to list it wherever they have to get the listing, and then beat them down on price until it finally sells. That literally, I guarantee you can look in the industry. That literally is their marketing plan, and it has been for a number of years.
It is that the process you want to have. Like you're living in your home. Do you want showings for 3-4 months? Do you want to get, if you price your home $15,000 over, those buyers know. I mean, they're going through the same range of homes. If they go through 10 homes, they know when ones are $15,000, $20,000 over. And even if they like it, they must really like it. They're going to come in even lower to meet in the middle. So,
So in that case, shouldn't we leave room for negotiation?
I would just, again, plan right now 3 to 4% probably worth of concessions. That's kind of worst case scenario. The market will tell you if we're overpriced. Is if we're not getting showings and we're not getting questions being asked, like we're probably overpriced.
Based on your numbers, though, what I'm finding is that I need 20,000 out of this house when it's said and done. I mean, that's what I have to have.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're going to have to price it up.
And so that's again where I'll look at the estimate of proceeds, and if I'm telling her that she's probably gonna walk away with 10,000, she wants 20,000. I just don't know if that's possible. I've turned down a couple listings this year where I told them honestly what I thought their home was worth, and they're like, well, that's just not gonna make sense for us. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, but I would rather have the conversation and the work with that person stop there than to list their home for 6 months, take photos, run the sign, lockbox, showings, feedback, just to have, your $25,000 overpriced. And I think that kind of goes back to being that real estate professional. Like, I've really looked at the numbers and I know which way the market's shifting, and maybe if you want it, if you think you can get another 15,000, honestly, at this point, we probably need to wait till spring. And from now till spring, you need to paint these walls. You need to, you're going to really have to step up your game on getting this home ready to list.
Can't you just lower your commission?
I haven't earned a commission yet.
Oh, okay.
What I tell people, I haven't earned a commission yet. You pay me when this home closes, not at this point.
But will you take less?
Will you take less for your home?
Well, I don't know.
I can at this point, you know, and here's, you know, it's a tough world right now. If we get to a situation where we're $500,000 apart, I can help out. But at this point, if I help out now, I cannot help out later. And again, I haven't earned anything. Right now, it's just numbers on a paper. Like I'm not asking for a check now. And I always kind of end it with like, I want to show you that like, I'm not going to negotiate on this. It's the same way I'm going to not negotiate on your home. Like my goal is to get you the most out of it, and I'm worth what I'm asking.
Okay, so if we sign, I think we'd be willing to sign maybe 60, 90 days. And I don't think we can give you the full this.
My minimum is 3 months.
Okay.
By the time I take photos and get it out on the market, the average days right now are probably 45 to 75 days. The minimum I'll do is 90 days. With the intention that I'm gonna have a good 90 days with you, even if it doesn't sell, and that you're gonna renew with me. And that we're gonna get this thing sold for you. I lost a listing earlier this year because I was just telling people 6 months, and then even listings that I don't get, and they email me to say, hey, Colin, sorry, it's not gonna work out. I will follow back up with them and say, hey, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like, best of luck. I completely understand there's a lot of really good realtors out there, but is there anything in particular that I did not offer that the other realtor did that made you choose them? And earlier this year, someone was like, well, he'd do a 3-month listing. Shit, I would have done a 3-month listing if you would have asked. Like, you know, so I always say 3 months if they ask, and usually ask for 6 months. So,
well, I've got a friend in the business. I'm just thinking maybe I should be talking to them.
who does your friend work full-time or part-time? What realtor?
Yeah, they're a little bit newer, but I mean, we've been buddies for a while.
I mean, you definitely can. There's a lot of moving parts in real estate, and, you know, friends and family, sometimes, you know, turmoil happens, so that you always have that variable. And then I always go back to myself, like, you know, I'm a full-time, this is the area I work in. I'm really good at what I do. Like, you know, your friend lives in Norwalk, and I mean, how much of a priority is it gonna be to be an Ankeny listing and marketing your home?
Well, one of the things I always tell people too is like, you know, I understand that's a friend of yours. The only thing I can do is promise you that there's nobody will take better care of you than me. Nobody.
You can call and yell at me.
Yeah,
You can call me bad.
the other thing,
You know, we can be honest with each other, and that's first and foremost.
Yeah.
You know, and what's amazing to me too is that how easy it is to get your real estate license. And I have like candid conversations with sellers where, like, you know, it's 70% to get your real estate license. And I tell people it's 70% to get your driver's license. And you've driven around town, there's some really bad drivers out there. It's the same way with real estate. Like, you know, if you got a heartbeat and get a C on a test, like, you can get your license, and then you're selling $200,000 and $300,000 and $400,000 pieces of property, like the largest tangible asset that most people own. And that, you know, it's where your families are raised and everything else. My brother works for Edward Jones. He had to take like 15 tests to sell a $3 stock, you know, and for all the regulations, everything he has to go through. I'm surprised that as real estate you don't, but I take my profession very seriously. And, you know, I think letting them know that you're there for them. And
one of the things that I ask him, it just point blank, I'm like, could you fire your friend and still save the relationship? Because that's really hard. It's really hard to fire your friend, you know, and sometimes you have to.
And going back to listing blanks and agreements, like I go for 6. If they say something, I'll do it for 3. But I always tell people, at any given point, if you're not happy, I'm probably not happy. You want to fire me? Like, I am not going to hold you hostage to this listing. I will be over in 10 minutes, pick up my sign and lockbox, and like, no harm, no foul. Yeah, I'm not going to send you a bill for some work that I've done or a photo. I mean, I've seen that before too. Like, cancel a listing, and then the listing agent tries to send them a bill for the $100 they spent on photos.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
I'm not going to be like,
yeah. And that's the only thing I do is, you know, because of the way I take listings, I spend more money because I do a home inspection up front, I do radon inspection up front, I have the house staged up front and photos. And so I spend all that money up front. So they have to be with me for 90 days. If they're not with me for 90 days, I will send them a bill.
Mhm.
And I tell them up front, it's like, I'm gonna spend, over $500 to put your home on the market. You're not gonna spend a dime. So, it's just a different way of doing it. But I do, and I want a 6-month commitment with that, look, if you're not happy, you should fire me. But you've got to give me that period of time to market your home. Otherwise, I can't spend that kind of money to get it ready. So,
and that's, I think, like you're talking about, everyone's process is different. And if you look at some of the top realtors, some have different marketing gimmicks. Some will install granite countertops if you list with them. Some will do a 5, 5.5, or 6. Some will give you a moving truck. Whatever your little gimmick is or your niche, like, just be you and be authentic. And like you said, like, I think it's completely justifiable to ask for you commit with me for 3 months if I'm spending $500 or $600. What other realtor is going to come in here and stage your home and have a radon inspection and a home inspection and take care of that stuff?
Yeah. So the other thing, one of the things that comes up, people like, well, where do you office out of? Because I want somebody here. So, and for us, it's easy. I mean, my home office is Altoona. We have 9 offices. So we're all over. We have 9 offices local. We have another 5 statewide. So I mean, we've got it covered. Where I put my file cabinet on has nothing to do with business. So if I'm listing a house in Johnston, I'm comfortable going to Johnston. If I'm listing a house on the south side, I'm comfortable going to south side. And if it's a little bit out or you haven't been there for a while, just gain knowledge and get yourself ready. Know your schools, know your stuff, know everything about the area you're going to. There's no such thing as going to a listing appointment with too much information. No such thing. Even if you didn't use any of it, when you sit there and talk with them, you have all that knowledge to help with your marketing, your planning, this buyer's call, that kind of stuff. It's all there ready for you. So, any other questions that you have? And we have some. Has all this been passed out? Did you? Okay.
These are all in Drive too, so if you want to make copies and then tweet these.
Yeah. Well, the listing questions that you were talking about, that one's out. Okay. But we have these things just to help you, and it's inside all of this. And I encourage you to go through this. There's a lot of information on what we pass out, and you should at least read it once and go through the mindset of the questions you ask and why you're asking them. What are you looking for? So that you can be effective in your process.
It becomes a script, and if there's 10 questions, if only 4 are really important to you, don't worry about asking the other 6.
And it's like, if you're newer in the business, use the company. If you're newer in the business, use the office. It's like, well, how many homes have you sold? Shoot, I mean,
Remax Concepts is one of the premier real estate companies.
we've sold tons of homes. And the nicest thing about it is that, I work with, another 160 agents in the marketplace.
Especially if someone's like, well, you're newer, I'm surrounded by great realtors with our company, and they're great resources. And, if you're newer, no one's gonna work harder. Like,
Right.
I don't have the advantage of saying, like, I only have yours and one other listing anymore.
Do you use leverage, the first to know? I try to use that as much as I can. We've got 200 other agents in the concepts team, and said, hey, we put information out there. I really like leverage that.
Yeah, I used that a lot last year remember when they had a new listing site on Facebook?
Oh,
Des Moines?
Yeah.
Like, I would say, like, again, like, we're gonna list your home on Tuesday, and we're gonna blast on Facebook at First to Know, and there's a private real estate realtor Des Moines area website. And so any of those little things that you can you have to tell the seller, though, like, that's a tool that you use. Yep. But if the seller doesn't know that you have access to 200 of the top realtors in Des Moines, and that you're sending a message out specifically on their home, there's no value to it. It might be the way that you sell it, but they're never going to know about it unless you. That's why they like that marketing sheet. It's like simple and cheesy.
That's what I have. I have one that's like 70 or 80 things that I do, and it's like everything. Like, put a sign in your yard. I'm gonna post it on Facebook. Like, literally every little tiny thing.
Absolutely, because,
And they love it when you hand that to them, they're like 3 pages.
their
of all
mindset
this
is, you know
stuff
what,
in
you
it."
used to have a sign in
About
the
it,
yard.
Then they'll ask you, well, are you gonna put it on Zillow? Of course I'm gonna put it on Zillow. I'm gonna put it on every major website online.
Yeah, we end up on virtually every real estate website out there. I mean, some of them, you don't even know the names
Yeah.
of, because all of our listings go out through List Hub and then they're distributed, you know, to all those different sites. And so until that changes, you know, you're everywhere out there. You're on all these different sites. You end up on, I think, every site that you can search on, we're on. Just part of the deal.
One other note on the, when you're doing the estimate of proceeds and you're disclosing the list side admin fee, we have documents in .loop and now on Drive too that list out everything that is involved in that, you know, that fee.
Mhm.
It's a good detailed sheet and you can customize it with your ACR's name, your TC's name, so that when they start seeing communications, they recognize those names. And then there's one on the buying side too, so.
Well, and to say, like, going through that, be like, well, there's a $325 RE/MAX real estate service center fee. If you don't know what that's for, they're like, oh, it's just another $300 fee.
Yeah.
But if you start listing them,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I know like enough, 8 or
The
10
list-
of
the
them,
list
where I'm
that
like,
they have
you just
is-
want them to do it, like, you know.
Yeah.
Give them the list and say,
Yeah.
you guys wanna do all of
Yeah.
this?
Here's all the stuff that they do.
Is that on .loop, is that? or-
It's on .loop and in Drive too, yeah.
So
I
there's-
just tell
it's all
people
there.
that they work with me to make sure your home closes on time
Yeah.
efficiently.
Yeah. I have a
They usually
whole
don't ask
team.
any other questions.
Yeah,
I have a whole team of people that assist me in the process.
And on the estimate of proceeds, I always give them the like worst case scenario. So on my initial one, I put in fire closing costs, home warranty,
Yeah, I don't do that, I just
All of
top
that.
number.
just so they,
What's
Yeah,
it called?
I do that same thing too.
I believe it's listing admin fee details.
Yeah, I
And then
don't,
the other one.
I don't usually do that, I just stick to the top number and then
Yeah.
everything below matches.
yeah.
And then just say, you know, they might ask for closing
Well, but
costs,
then
so we'll
we
update
can
it as
just have
we-
that conversation, like say their outcome was 30 grand and that was with them paying 2,500 in closing costs and the home warranty. An offer comes in, maybe 2 grand less with closing costs and home warranty, and I'm like, okay, from the original 30 grand we talked about, you're 2 grand less than that.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
So we don't have to like,
it's helpful to have that, I mean, because offers get weird. I mean, they're 2 grand for closing costs, some special home warranty, $1,500 for
Right.
carpet, you know. The admin, you know, and you never want to start, so like when we get the closing disclosures, going back and forth with all the counters, I go and update it, send that to them. Once we have a deal, I update the last one, which I also use to double check my closing disclosure. But I send the closing disclosure with that estimate of proceeds to say, look, like 2 months ago when you sold your home, I told you you'd walk away with 30,500 and you're walking away with 30,900.
Yeah.
IowaTaxProCalc.com, niftiest little website.
Oh, that's fun, yeah. I still encourage you to know your taxes so that you
Yeah.
don't have to use it, but it is nice to have.
You take the net taxes, punch it in there, project the close date, and it tells you.
Yeah.
And it's
And
not
I don't know, I
100%
haven't checked
accurate.
with Jamie to see if it's, I think it's a pretty good average, I'm not sure if it's dead
The
on.
problem is that 2016,
They
the
changed,
feds, they
right.
changed, so
Yeah.
they've got to pick one number where.
Yeah.
But you know what I tell people, this estimate of proceeds should be close, it's not gonna be accurate, but I'm not gonna be off by like 10 grand or anything. You know, so
Yeah, and I give up.
your mortgage payoff will probably affect the final number more than.
I give updated when this process goes on. I continue to give updated things about, as I gain information. One of the things you'll see in .loop is in the closing docs section, you'll start seeing things like the actual termite bill, the actual abstracting bill, the actual payoffs, all that kind of stuff. And as soon as I get close in there, I'll do another one and say, here's where the numbers are pointing us, and it gets more accurate as you go. So,
The other thing that a lot of times not accounted for in that estimate of proceeds, especially if they're like, well, you know, if we get an extra $1,500 out of it, you know, your escrow account balance is gonna be coming back to you
Yeah.
too. And if you have a big chunk that you're paying for taxes, there should be a decent chunk in your escrow
right.
for money that's saved up.
And sometimes that's on the payoff statement, and you can say you can tell them about that, how that works, so.
Oh, that's iotaxpro.com, is that?
And you can use
Yeah,
that,
less sole brokers who,
yeah.
puts
Oh,
that,
yeah.
so.
Data ninja.
Huh?
He's
Oh,
a data
Yeah,
ninja.
He's a geek, ain't he?
But listen to that stuff, because that's the type of like, I listen to his stuff, you know, you take it with a grain of salt too, but like his, on Central Iowa, Mark Charter has been talking about inventory lately. Someone else was talking about like the way that it's shifted, like take that stuff, like absorb it, and then when you go to your listing appointments, like use it, like, this year's home sales are up like 600 homes, and 600 units, but prices are coming down. Like I did a post on Facebook the other day. I had a listing where I was looking, wasn't selling, checking comps, pulled the comps, and I'm like 20 homes, like 17 had price reductions. So I screenshot it, and I was like, here's what's happening in the market. 17 arrows going down out of 20, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's part of the market.
Well, you know, Ankeny right now is.
Thank you, everyone.
560.
yeah.
Oh.
And then single family is 435, that's more.
Oh, wow.